Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift for a shortened podcast like both stages that we saw today. Well, one of them didn't even exist. This is a Tirreno-Adriatico Stage 5 recap. We also had Paris supposedly on today, but it was shortened and cancelled eventually, Benji, because of strong winds, right?
Yes, indeed. So first it was said to be shortened to the last two hills, which would have been a banger of a stage, 79 kilometers with two hills, one of which is super steep. But then it was shortened with like local circuit in front of it, was like a rumor. And then Warbaz in the end said on Twitter that they had no clue what was happening. They had no information with the teams, which is also great, obviously. But in the end, cancelled due to strong winds, up to 90 to 100k an hour. So good luck riding in that if it's crosswinds.
I don't know if this was the CPA or the police that, because I was texting with Jack Haig, he was on the bus, he was also like, I have no idea. He's like, I reckon this is going to get cancelled as they were on the buses because they made them do like 5 minutes of riding around the initial start town, maybe because they still get do you reckon they still invoice them?
They have to,
town?
right? The start town?
Like, well, the riders rode around at 20 k's an hour. Here's the invoice. Maybe. And anyway, he's like, I reckon it's going to get cancelled because the police, like, I'm not sure you're even allowed to have an event outside in 100km/h winds in France. And there's been all these strikes and everything. So Paris cancelled. I've had a lot of cancellations. Grand Camino stage and now Paris. And anyway, we'll have a stage tomorrow, which is the mountaintop finish, I think. Tirreno-Adriatico, though, that was also shortened. The hilltop finish, well, the mountaintop finish was supposed to be 13 kilometers at about 7%. And there's like a lot of these mountaintop finishes, and you'll see this in the Vuelta Stage 4 up to Arcalis or Arinsal or wherever, where the ski resorts, there's a lower parking area where there's space for buses, for ski tourists and for cycling teams. And then there's probably another 3, 4, 5 kilometers above there where there is some road up to the top. That was where it was supposed to finish at the top. They shortened it to the car park.
Is that why we, for example, see on like higher mountain finishes that the riders go to the finish and then they turn back and they go to the parking a bit lower?
Yep, like Covadonga, for example. Remember when Roglic rode past Koos in the Vuelta 21? That's what generally happens because there's no space. I mean, the Tour de France doesn't like to finish up there because they generally don't. Puy de Dôme, they might. But in the Vuelta, you'll see it a lot more because they're like, let's find the most ridiculous goat track possible and finish a race up there. So they're going to finish at the car park, 10.8k, 7.3%. Not as difficult, not as long. Not good news for the pure climbers like Adam Yates, Enrico Mas. Adam Ricardo Yates. Not good news for them. Good news for Roglic, who destroyed everyone in the sprint yesterday. It's a really hard stage beforehand, hilly all day. The problem also was, well, I don't know if the CPA shortened it or not, this stage, because the delegate was Salvato, and when Salvato is the CPA delegate, then stages get cancelled or shortened.
There could be an active volcano.
Who? Salvato?
No, so if Salvato's there, you mean that it is more shortened or less?
Yeah, more likely, I think.
Okay.
I think he might have been there when there was the 2021 or 2020 rainy stage.
That makes sense.
Anyway, super windy. I also think organisers are much keener to shorten a stage when there's the possibility of a hoarding at the finish blowing over, because that doesn't look good. And that happened in the Giro before when your man on YOLO got hit.
Luca Wackerman got hit.
Yeah. And it happened, he's on Vini Zabu, and it happened in Oman just recently. So they're wanting to avoid that. They finished at the lower car park. Weird stage, Benji. Just like watching a peloton ride at 35 kilometers an hour, watching Remy Rocha just getting blown to pieces.
Yeah, like, it was so obvious from just seeing that there was a lot of wind. We see the peloton going slow in areas where it's headwind, obviously. That's great analysis here. There's headwind, riders go slower. Anyway, Arkea and Cofidis riders flying to the left and the side of the road, left and right. The Arkea one was a bit more dangerous than Rocha, because if Rocha went off the road, it would have been in a ditch. But the Arkea rider Guglielmi in the breakaway was straight up going to hit a wall if the wind was a bit higher. So that would have been very risky. Fortunately, he stayed up on the bike, but we were going towards a final climb with a a peloton when the break was being caught, to be fair. And I was curious, what are we going to see? Are we going to see Bora pace it, but fake pace it to make sure that Kemna can get a great result and hopefully stay as close as possible in the jersey? Will we see a team like Movistar take it up, or will we see Jumbo-Visma try and use their multiple riders? Or, well, to be honest, you could think about UAE and say, oh, they got 17 leaders in this race, they might attack left and right and so forth. But then again, I've got a feeling that they're not working well together. But Formula was working for one of them, eh? Formula seemed to be on the side of McNulty in this one.
Formula, he always works. He got his chance in Saudi. It's generally like the younger guys like Ayuso, Almeida won't work, and McNulty will generally get to go for his own race in non-pog races too. That's generally how it works. Bennett as well seems to be on domestique mode too for the others, particularly for Almeida and McNulty here. But you're right, Kamna with only 6 seconds on Roglic. It's a tricky game for Bora, Benji, because you pace slow, you false pace, you don't use Hindley or Vlasov aggressively.
Yeah.
You get Roglic in the finish. And Roglic, unless Leonard comes second or third, and probably even if he comes third, Roglic goes into the jersey anyway. So you're kind of damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't. I think they played it okay.
Yeah.
Maybe could have done a few things differently. But it's really tough. Rarely you'll see this. A headwind climb so strong that we have a group of Movistar pacing the base with Oliveira. It's a prisoner's dilemma because he's doing full gas and everyone in the wheels is literally cruising and chatting. People at the back are literally chatting whilst he's full gas uphill because the wind is so strong. We're talking like 60 kilometer an hour headwind, and it does switch back a few times this climb. He pulls off, and then there's no real follow-up from Verona that I could see for Movistar with 10Ks, 9Ks to go on this climb. And it really was Nico Denz. It was what we suggested. Bora were like, we'll just control it with Nico Denz for a while and maybe play numbers at the end.
And that stayed like that for a while because there were no really early moves by a Warren Barguil and so forth, who seemed to be, I don't know, a lot of riders were just waiting. And it's logical, eh? A climb where the headwind is happening, you know that if you go, you've got a limited chance of making it because you're going to be solo. Just because you said, if the rider is pacing at the front full on in headwind, if a rider is pacing behind, also in headwind, but the rest of the peloton is behind riders and therefore is benefiting from that and can come later on and try and sweep over you. That being said, eventually moves started happening in that group though. I think Formula started moving up with roughly 6K to go with McNulty in the wheel, and that was the real first active moment in the climb here. And Formula paced for a bit. McNulty stayed in the wheel. Formula went off the front, and then it was the Bennett's turn. So UAE had a plan to make the climb a bit harder than it was already. Those two riders did quite a bit of work between 6K to go and 4.5K to go. But at that moment, I noticed that Almeida and Roglic were kind of not in a good position. Would you say that's because it's usual for an Almeida to be near the back of the peloton, or do you think they were both hiding knowing that headwind is on this climb?
I wasn't concerned about either of those two at that point. Roglic maybe, but after what I saw yesterday, no. Yesterday he also was not in good position on the climb. I think he's doing a new thing. I think he's trying to stay in the sort of the fat,
but on
the fat of the peloton. Yeah, no, I think he is. I think he's trying to stay in like the best drafting position, because if you are at the front in a line, you're not going to get as good a draft, particularly if they're not in direct straight headwind. They're moving around a little bit. Might be coming from the side. So I think he's just trying to bide his time there. But we do see riders dropping. We see Benoit dropping. Alaphilippe does Alaphilippe things. He nearly crashes himself into Valter. It's very odd. Pidcock is at the back. He wasn't looking good. Van der Poel drops. He was there for a long time, though, just kind of cruising. Aronsman's also in tough position. But if you want to jump in and jump onto Zwift, the easiest way to start Zwifting is here at the Zwift Hub. Unbox and unlock virtual worlds and crush your fitness goals. Benji's been crushing his. He's on, I think, 4 race days in a row, smashing his records out of the park. And the Zwift Hub is a full immersion feel, no sweat setup, and will unlock your fitness for $4.99. The best value direct drive trainer, or any trainer really, on the market. Comes with your choice of cassette pre-installed to match your bike, whatever speed you have. It feels real. It's a powerful training tool. And yeah, encourage you to go and check it out through the link down below. Thanks to Zwift, as always, for supporting the podcast. But UAE, Benji, they kind of did, when they went through a switchback, they kind of put it in a line, and they were trying to use it to their advantage a little bit there, and when the wind changed direction. But I couldn't really, I don't know, I couldn't really tell whether they were going for Almeida or McNulty. Yeah. I don't think there was any leader.
The follow-up was inconclusive.
Yeah.
And I feel like there was no real response instantly either, because an Adam Yates was not going instantly, and Almeida was not going instantly, here. And those riders were in that group. Now we go further on to the climb. We're now with roughly, let's say we are with 4K to go. We see a move on the right side of the road. When the tempo goes a bit down, UAE boys are like, meh, I'm not going to make a move here. Caruso attacks, 4.6K to go, and he goes off the front. And there's no imminent response to that, except for George Bennett, who is still there, who's still pacing, and he paces for a tiny bit, but he's just paced already for half a kilometer, so he's not going to be able to close that instantly. So he goes off the back, and the tempo kind of dies out a tiny bit.
It's Hindley.
So, yeah, well, it took a bit, no? I feel like it took a bit, and we saw some moves by UAE then.
Like, no one really responded, and this is the beauty of headwinds. It's like, no one wants to attack, because if someone's on your wheel, they will do so much less work than you eating the wind. But then if you can get a gap, if you use a hairpin where there's a tailwind section, it changes direction, if you can get a gap and then suddenly people can't sprint across to your wheel, then you create the prisoner dilemma back in the group. And you just do your tempo full gas, and then no one else wants to work back in the group. And that's what started happening. And we saw that actually on Port d'Anvillera up here. It's super windy here today. It's windy everywhere across France, Italy, Spain. We saw that when Quintana attacked in a hairpin in the Tour de France stage that Koos won. It was super strong headwind that day. They were found out on highway. And then no one else wanted to close him, and he took the Henry de Grange of that Tour de France. And that's what happened with Caruso. And it means Landa and Santi get to sit in the wheels.
Exactly, and we do see moves from UAE after Caruso has the gap, where we see, first of all, I think Yates on the right side of the road in the background, not like full on view, because the camera work in this Tirreno, I'm gonna be honest, I can't be the only one that notices this, right? Yesterday on the climb, they were showing the back of the group all the time, and not really the front, and in today's version, they're like, the camera is like, not even showing everything. I don't know what's going on, either it's in my head.
It's windy.
Yeah, but is it because the camera's getting winded to the side or what?
I think so. I mean, I'm with you on the production cuts. Yeah. So the Tour de France is bad for this too. Well, remember, does anyone know what happened in the stage Magnus Cort won in the GC group? Does anyone, or the stage Jungels won? Does anyone know what happened with UAE? We don't, because we didn't see the GC group for about 20 minutes, because no one can just cut back. Like the same, and it's bad in the Giro too. You remember the stage that Cohen Bowman won ahead of Volta and Schmid when he chopped them. Like we don't care. It wasn't so bad today because it wasn't break, but I'm just going to say it now in case any producer listening. No one cares except maybe their uncle or cousin or mother about who's coming fifth on the stage from the break. I'm sorry for their sponsors. I'm happy you got in the break. I don't give a fuck. Go back to the GC group. Show the guys that come first, the guy that wins. Okay, we've seen that. And we'll go back to the GC group, and maybe we can show them rolling across the line afterwards.
Remember that Vuelta sprint where we were fighting with Pacher and Soler and cared about who came first, the two in the background of Uran winning?
Well, at least they were kind of in the picture, and then they can go. I mean, when it's like, broken across. In that case, yeah, keep showing them. But Caruso's looking good. We can't see anyone really behind him through the corners, so who is going to actually bridge across? Because it's, as Benji said, Yates goes and then everyone's in his wheel. And he's like, don't want to do this. Going to protect my own GC. Hindley's there. He's like, everyone's in my wheel. He's gapping Kamner a little bit. O'Connor and Ajudazere are moving, but Kelderman's on his wheel.
Almeida.
And Jumbo-Visma want to play for a sprint, obviously.
Almeida did the same, The same as Yates, goes to the front. The weirdest thing with Almeida is every time he attacks, he does that attack where he like faces at the front for X amount of time. But if you do that here, you're basically not helping yourself, You're making an attack that will not help you because you don't have a gap, so everybody is in your wheel. You're just pacing the group.
And Enric did something a little bit different afterwards. But whilst this is happening, there are riders dropping. Peacock drops. We weren't surprised by that after yesterday. But Aronsman drops again. Caruso has about 20 seconds with 1.5 Ks to go. And it's only like 7%. And it flattens out a little bit at the end, I think, as well. Until Enric Mas' big attack on the right-hand side. The problem is he brought Ciccone. No, was he solo? Who did he bring with him?
Buitrago and
Buitrago,
later
yeah.
Ciccone was also on his wheel. And you got to keep in mind, Landa's still up front. Buitrago's in the wheel of your boy Enrique Mas that just attacked. So Buitrago's not going to start pacing. Then again, he also didn't look that great 2 seconds later. But Mas kept pacing for a tiny bit. We also had other riders join to that. When Buitrago dropped, Landa joined and Carfi joined. So we're basically with a 4-man group. Landa, Mas, Ciccone, and Carfi catching up to Caruso. Groups behind, we've got like
Wilco
that group that was
pacing
split
behind.
up in like 3-ish groups roughly. But the gaps are so limited that if the tempo stops, they can come back later on. And the curious thing for me was, Landa catches up with Caruso, that group. Caruso doesn't start
counter.
pacing.
Had to counter.
Caruso doesn't start pacing for that Landa group. And he does still finish in the same group at the end. Do you think Caruso should have paced for Landa?
At a minimum, yes. At a minimum, he should have paced, especially when Enric probably wins the sprint against Huge and Landa, but at least Landa's gaining time on Roglic. He's gaining time on Ciccone, Kamna. Bora not there, I don't think. He's gaining time on, Hindley and Vlasov. I think he has to pace at a minimum if he could, and I think he was thinking about it. Landa should have countered, because Enric paced the whole way across to Caruso, but then I think it's impossible to really tell from front on, but I almost think as Mas was catching Caruso, I think he pushed really, really hard in the last 15, 20 seconds, almost sprinting across to Caruso to then, because you see Landa getting the drops and he's sprinting to stay in the draft. And I think that blunted the ability of Landa to counter. And then, but I feel bad for Mas because I think Mas wins this stage easily if it's the normal stage with no headwind. Like, I think he wins easily.
I think so as well. The curious thing as well was that Landa was like literally going to his microphone and saying something in it. The second that they catch up, no clue what that was. Maybe they also just wanted to wait to have Buitrago in the same group, but
no shot.
Man, that makes no sense,
shot.
eh? But by the way, I do have to say, Buitrago's progression has been so good over the last year. And I actually don't know where he will land. He's not the kind of rider where I'm like, oh, that's going to be a top GC rider. But he's climbing really well, so I kind of don't know where he's going.
He's just a solid, consistent rider. He's got a little bit of a punch. He'll win a stage here and there. He can get in a breakaway. He's just a really good climber, all-rounder. Yep. He just lacks that really top-end climbing, which doesn't mean he's not a great rider. Ciccone is actually looking very, very good and strong this season. Valencia, he was good, and here he's good again. But Musk attacks again, but unfortunately for him, Wilco, and I was thinking, Jumbo, the 2-liter thing is nice and all, but you can't let Caruso win this stage and have Roglic win the sprint the second behind after what happened yesterday. And Wilco's selfless teammate, he does pull back the Mas group. He then also kind of paces a little bit on the front. I think he thought about attacking, but then he couldn't. People are on his wheel. Hindley and Vlasov are all there. Geoghegan Hart's in good position. Hugh Carthy's sort of waving around. He's in good shape, but again, headwind climb not suiting anybody like him or Enric. Enric's brought back. He's not going to win the sprint. And we see Roglic moving up to fifth wheel. We know what's going to happen. Wilco can't really lead it out, and it's actually Hindley goes on the inside, then Geoghegan Hart snaps. Geoghegan Hart gets good separation around the right-hand bend, then Ciccone comes around his wheel, then Roglic around the further side. It looks like it's going to be close, and also because I hate it when the camera, it's right on the riders, and then it keeps shortening back, and I'm like, you have no idea where the finish line is. Because I was like, oh, Roglic is going to lose. And then the camera kept going. And then like, oh, he's a bike length ahead now. And Roglic just destroys everybody in the sprint. So Geoghegan Hart, once again, he is in good shape. His sprint is very good. He's just unlucky to run into Roglic and also not get a lead out because he had no teammates in the group. Just like yesterday, Ciccone is in good shape, but Roglic is just too good. This is perfect for him. And 10K, 7% climb, 60 kilometer an hour headwind, like, everything fell into Roglic cards today. Plus, Wilco was strong.
Definitely. Very strong ride and very tactical ride. Hiding when necessary to make sure that you're not in the wind. And also, as a consequence, not necessarily overly responding to every move that happens to not explode yourself. He made a risk. They both played a risk, Kelderman and Roglic, by staying in that group and betting on that group coming back to the front, while the others that attacked kind of burned their match trying to follow that initial move by Mas. So there's a bit of a thing there going on. That being said, it's kind of ended in a group sprint, as a consequence of the headwind.
Yeah.
And there's like an actually large group finishing. How many were there in there? Like 16-ish is my pure guess.
So many. So many.
It's not what you'd expect going into the stage, but then again, with the headwind, it's very explanatory that this happens. And obviously, when it comes to Roglic, he takes a stage, so 10 bonus seconds. So I'm afraid that Lenny is not blue anymore.
It's very sad for Kemna. Although I'll run through the top 10. Roglic wins ahead of Ciccone and Gegenhardt. And then we have 4, 5, 6 are all Bora Hansgrohe, Hindley, Kemna, Vlasov. Just somewhat curious. Landa, 7th, ahead of Almeida. And as you said, Benji, Caruso finishes in the top 10, 9th, then McNulty, 10th. So we have a lot of teams, 1, 2, 3, 4 teams, double stacking, some triple stacking the top 10 of this stage. Very, very unusual stage. Roglic goes into the GC lead by 4 seconds ahead of Kemna. Almeida's actually in 3rd on 12 seconds. McNulty's in 4th on 17 seconds. Kelderman on 19. Gegenhardt on 19. Vlasov is on 21 seconds. Hindley 22. Ciccone 24. Mas 31. Lots of teams with multiple riders in the top 10. It's very, very small gaps. Tomorrow we have arguably a harder stage if the wind, well, they're going to turn around. So if the wind is not a headwind, tomorrow we could see, and I think we will see, bigger gaps. 196 kilometers. Yeah. It is a classic stage. It's the last time to do anything on GC because stage 7 is the San Benedetto del Tronto, which used to be the TT and is now a sprint stage that Bauhaus will probably win. Tomorrow is, I can't even count them, like 20 climbs between 2 and 4 minutes, some 6 minutes. And let me have a look at this. One of them's got cobbles, and it has Muro in it. So if it has cobbles in it, if it's shaded a little bit, it has Muro in it, it's going to be steep. It's going to be, could be selective. I think we're going to see a classics battle tomorrow, Benji.
I think so as well. And there's so much opportunity on this parkour because if you look closely to this parkour, then you would say that the last half of the race is like 3 circuits, 2.5 circuits of a certain loop that they do. That seems to be where the ramp is, where GC riders can make a move from the peloton. But there's plenty of climbs that happened before then, which means that there can be satellite riders send up the road in the Recanati climb, which is like the first climb in the race. Like initially, it's like a small descent of like 20 meters, probably a kilometer. And then we go straight on to the first climb of the day. So there's so much opportunity to send domestiques in the breakaway. And I think we will see that tomorrow. I think Bora will definitely try that. And they have so many leaders that they can put pressure on the likes of a Jumbo-Visma in this race. If I see that team, I'm expecting a Nico Denz in the breakaway or something, and maybe another domestique in the breakaway. And we might see a stage 14 Giro Torino event happening where they try and set up, I don't know, obviously Kemna's up there in GC, but when it comes to the rest of GC, I'll have to take a look where the Bora boys are following.
They're on 21 and 22. 21
and 22 seconds. I'll be honest, I think this parkour fits Vlasov the most of the 3.
Giro dell'Emilia winner. Hindley was good on that Torino stage, though. I think they just play all of them aggressively and hope it turns out well. And as you said, Denz is someone you'd expect to see in the break. He was pacing on the climb today. I'll throw in Formolo. If I'm UAE, I'd be wanting to get Formolino in the breakaway.
Yeah.
McNulty is Covey here? Is he sick?
I think he's here.
McNulty is unbelievable on his day on these sorts of stages, all-day engine, so he's very, very dangerous. You don't want to give him a gap, and he's also only on 17 seconds on GC, and it's up to, Jumbo-Visma, if it was just Roglic, then it's a tougher ask, but they've got the second threat of Wilco in top shape. Hindley goes on a move, Roglic sits in the bunch. Wilco, if he can, goes with Hindley, doesn't work. And I think that's the beauty of having Kelderman close on GC. But no, GC died today, so they lost that third option.
Do you believe, well, not a real surprise, to be honest. I never saw it happening past this stage. That being said, for tomorrow's stage, do you see the possibility of what they did at the UAE, at the Tour de France against UAE Team Emirates, where they sent riders as a satellite rider in the breakaway to make that happen? Or do you think that might be dangerous, knowing that they're not fighting against a five-man team this time around? They're fighting against multiple teams that will try and do this tactic. For example, Van Aert, what are they going to do with Van Aert on this stage? He has to be chained up, right?
I think Roglic will want Van Aert literally next to him the entire day.
Yeah.
If I had to guess. I don't think they're going to go for as aggressive a strategy as we saw on the Mons stage or something like that. I think Roglic is going to want them. If we replay, this is like Paris Stage 8 last year. I wouldn't expect them to pace as hard as they did in Paris Stage 8 last year. It's really for the other teams to make the race. And it's going to be a big fight. It's the last chance. And there's so many. You make one mistake, you get dropped on these climbs. They have a satellite rider up the road. You can lose 15 seconds plus bonies, and your GC is gone. People moving from 7th to 1st. We saw Rui Costa won Valenciana on the last day in one of the, in a weird move. You just got to be up there. You got to be in it to win it. And anyone in the top 10, Enric Mas included, can win this GC. They're so close with the bonies.
The reason that I don't believe in Mas taking GC is because he's the kind of guy that needs to respond to everything. And he might actually get in trouble because of that. Because he's a lone leader at his team, while a Wilco following attacks, a Roglic following attacks, a UAE going with 3 guys, a Bora going with 3 guys, and he's also like at the back end of the top 10 on 31 seconds. So
it's a big gap.
I think it's going to be really difficult for Mas to win this race. I kind of don't see it, but I kind of hope he does, because I like Mas. I won't lie. Enrique. I don't know.
It'll be a good one, though. I'm looking forward to watching it on the Saturday. It should finish before the Pyrenees stage if that proceeds. The mountaintop finish tomorrow. Who have you got, Benji?
Winning tomorrow?
Can the break win? Van der Poel's here in decent shape. I think Van der Poel
Alexander
wins.
Vlasov wins.
Really?
Yeah.
I think Van der Poel wins Castelfidardo style, where no one really... The GC guys are all focusing on GC guys, and he gets a little bit of a free leash.
Okay.
And I don't think he'll attack that early as Castelfidardo. Alaphilippe, Quickstep have got him to ride for. They've got Baggioli. I presume they want him to win the stage as well, so maybe they'll help control for the GC team. So I do really think the non-GC guys have an advantage here, like Alaphilippe or Van der Poel. I'm going to go for Van der Poel because Van Aert, I think, will be on Roglic duties.
I trust the parkour so much that I believe it's going to be a stage 14 Torino, Giro d'Italia thing where there's so much opportunity. If no one uses it, I'm going to cry myself to sleep tomorrow night. So someone for GC needs to use it, and that's how the break dies in my head. Because if Bora wants to do that, they need to make sure that the gap to the breakaway is not gigantic, eh? They got to start pacing the peloton at some point. What, sorry?
I think Van der Poel anticipates from the GC group.
Oh, like that. Okay.
Yeah. Like Castelfidardo.
No, not impossible, but I might not rate him good enough yet.
It's hard to say, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know. It's impossible. Oh, sure. I'm just going on his class before San Remo next week. Anyway, that was the Tirreno-Adriatico recap. Big stage tomorrow. Big day of racing tomorrow. Make sure you tune into the podcast. Then, thanks to Zwift, as always, and we'll see you with the pods tomorrow. Ciao.